So I think generally we have a quite conducive environment in terms of the legal framework. Yeah, I know maybe one thing we will talk about in terms of the legal framework, even in terms of the registration, we might, at one point we feel like if you have the NGO affairs being under the state, before it used to be under the office of the president, we feel like, but I think now there's a separate entity that regulates what we do.
Very good. Any supplementary on that? Otherwise, we can move to how it is.
Yes. Child labor seems to be at the highest level in some communities in Ghana, where you see children selling banana, whatsoever it is on the highway, and in a rural Gambia, where you see them, with these marabouts, with children, doing all kinds of work. So, what do you do as Child Protection Alliance in order to mitigate, those children who are unfortunate to be in those conditions?
Again, I think what we do in this case is more trying to strengthen the accountability aspect, holding the state to account. Because when we work within the confinement of the legislation, the legal framework. And the issue of child labor, when you look at it, it's quite interesting. When you look at the dynamic in terms of the legal framework, that you have a particular provision that looks at children as those in special need and protection. You go to section 75 of the Children Act. It classifies all those that are supposed to be protected and provided the necessary assistance. When you talk about children begging, selling on the street, receiving arms, these are all within those categories of people. So if that is the provision in the Act, that talks about these are children that are in need, right? You put also that in context with the government commitment. You go to section 66 of the Act, government has taken a commitment that when it comes to issue of child safeguarding in this country, should be in consultation, it should be the government primary responsibility, in consultation with who? With the local government authorities. So when you look at that and you list that with the commitment as part 76 and 75 of the Act, that these children on the street, begging and selling on the street, should have been withdrawn from the street and provided the needed assistance it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, that is not happening, where we think that these children should have been withdrawn and provided the family strengthening program assistance, which we are not having in the country. I know the typical example that we have seen, a similar one to that approach, is the Nafara project that the government was implementing, having to give families some amount of money. So we still continue to engage them on that. But again, also you go back to, again, the issue of child labor. You have a whole section 41 to 44 of the Act has given 4 classification of labor. That a child can only be engaged. You go to section 70 of 43 of the Act, talks about what we call light labor. That simply means a child cannot do in any form of labor unless the child is 16 years of age. And any light labor simply means it does not have to interfere with the child's education. It does not have to interfere with the child's health. But again, you have the constitution that talks about the minimum age for economic employment of a person. A child is 16 years of age. Right. Again, you also have a provision that talks about the issue of apprenticeship. That also put a child at 12 years. So when you look at all these issues, the labor talks about light labor, it talks about night labor, even as where the child at 16 could be employed, but night labor simply means this child cannot be on the street immediately after 8 p.m. at night towards 6 a.m. in the morning. We also have what we call the hazardous environment, where children should not be exposed to anything that would become harmful to their health, also have interference. We talk about the mining going to sea. So when you put all this in context, you will realize that how do we look at the law now to address the issue of children begging or child labor. If the law is saying this child on the street should be withdrawn, and again you have section 18 of the Act that tells you you have a free compulsory basic education, that child should be actually going to school. Why would that child be on the street selling? So that tells you when you look at all the scenario, what we see is purely government not forthcoming in terms of enforcing the laws. And I always will say, you cannot also effectively enforce the laws in a situation where you have greater part of the population, almost 40% of the population are living within poverty. So now when you talk about having to enforce the laws without providing those support to the families, you are further also exposing these children to further harm and abuse, because if you said the child, you cannot be on the street. Because we had series of engagement with children. They will do this proudly. They will do this proudly. When you talk to them, they say they are helping their parents. And sometimes interesting, you have a situation where these children, the parents are actually not too living too healthily. Right? I have an instance where I engaged a particular child. He was on the street at night, and I went with him to see the house where he is. The father was old, very sick. The mother cannot afford. So it's whose responsibility to ensure that this child is given that support. That's why most of the time I'm long ahead with the law enforcement officers where arrests have been made. To say when you arrest these children, as per the section 66 of the 76, talks about they need assistance and support. Why arresting them? So arrest is not the issue. The issue is how government provides this support to the families to ensure that when if these supports are provided, then the government would be in a position to effectively enforce the laws. But without that, I don't think the issue of having to do away with the issue of child labor anytime soon will definitely addressed. And again, there's a whole lot of misconception where you talk about the classification of apprenticeship. Everybody thinks that apprenticeship is this having children jumping on the vehicle, doing everything. No. As per the law, that apprenticeship craft simply means for craftsmanship. These are institutions where children would be taken and there would be kind of like an agreement. They're looking at the working condition, the time and everything from both the parent, from both the child and the person who is giving the apprenticeship. But these are all these procedures are not followed. And that's why when you go to the mechanic sometimes, you can really see that actually this is not an environment where this child is supposed to be, but the child is working in that environment. When you talk to the ordinary person, the ordinary parent, to ask this child shouldn't be there, to her understanding is because she wants the child to learn apprenticeship, therefore that's the normal place to be. So I think, yes, in a nutshell, there's a whole lot of government not enforcing the laws, government not investing, and also there's a whole lot of a social cost acceptance to the issue of child labor in the country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fadi, talking about...
It's a supplement on this.
No, I want to...
Yeah, let me ask.
Only on the child labor.
Only on the child level, the same topic. Talking about this, then the education of children in the Gambia, I think there is this problem happening, like almundos. Parents do send their children for education, especially this Islamic education. Instead, you see them on the street begging, and at times they never join class to learn. They're just working on the street like that. We always call them almundos, and it is happening in the Gambia. What plan should we do as a country to stop that?
Well, there has been a lot of intervention around this particular area, having worked with government, having also worked with certain partners that has been implementing projects in relation to that. I think one thing that happens, as a country, we still have an issue, both within the government sector and within the civil society. We have an intervention in these specific areas. Because our interventions have never been based on sustainability. Right? When you go to Jara Song, for example, we have done a lot of investment around that. And to the extent that we have created what we call, there's this, what's the name of this? So we have a whole family, host family, we call them host family. Right? So host family simply means having to identify these children as vulnerable children on the street, take them to a host family and provide the basic needs to the time that you will be able to do a family tracing to take them back to their family. But when you take them back to their family, what are you taking them with? Right? Remember, you're taking them back to a family that still lacks the basic needs where this child is coming from. So you give this child there less than 1-2 weeks, the child is back on the street. So that means you still go round and round in the same cycle. So for me, I think, yes, there has been a lot of investment around this area, particularly through the intervention of UNICEF, through the intervention of Save the Children International within these two regions. But because the way this project has been adopted, it does not inform the issue of how do we sustain it, how do you make sure that this particular child is taken from the street and back to the family and provide the support and the child is back to school. And squarely also too, when you look at the issue of, there's a lot of politics, and now when we work as civil society, as a government, we are too keen having the quantitative part of it. This is the number of children I am able to withdraw from the street, but we don't see, we cannot report broadly to say this is the number of children I have withdrawn from the street and they stay with their family and now they are going back to school and they are doing a lot of things. So this is one of the things that we're looking at. And again, one thing that's still the issue of having marabouts, having children being on the street. I think still now, we have the fear syndrome. Right? That these are marabouts that we hardly talk to them. To say, don't do this. So they have a whole kind of like a niche where they are comfortable because the authorities fear to talk to them. We have instances, particularly, I think that this is around the Badawi area, where we had issues that a particular marabout will chain these children. Right? But because the name Big Marabout, that if you go there at the end of the day, that scares so many people to even go there and address the issues. So we have all these issues happening. Yeah, but I think in terms of helping these children, there's a lot more to be done, especially in terms of what do we do that will sustain, that will get these children out of on the street. Again, too, the same provision, you go to section 30A of the Constitution, section 18 of the Children Act, talks about compulsory education. That means from grade 1 to grade 9. So why would children of age go in school still on the street? What is happening? Because that provision is not giving the parents any discretion. It says that parents need to have their children to school. But what is happening with that provision? So for me, it's about how do we ensure, yes, as civil society, we do some of this program to make sure that we respond, we give the service that's supposed to be. But in terms of enforcement, it's the state that's supposed to do that. And the state cannot do effective enforcement without looking at this. And I think also too, squarely, this is a country that you cannot brag about statistics. Nobody would be able to come and tell you, this is the comprehensive statistics of children begging on the street. Because if you don't have those things, you cannot inform your decision making in terms of budgetary allocation, in terms of policies, whatever decision you want to make.
Can I come?
Yeah.
Can I come?
You have a support on that?
No.
Yes, the one. We started the.
Can I come back?
We started the issue on child labor. We did not even finish it. If you have a question on child labor, is that what Auntie that's a question?
No, I just want to come to
I just want to add something to it.
On child labor?
Yeah, on child labor.
Okay.
Because
After child labor, we come to Almoudi.
Yeah.
That's how we.
for this child labor issue, the problem, yes, the state might have lost on it because like the right to education, that is right almost in every country. But when you speak to the parents, they will tell you probably you don't have the resources, you don't have the means, even though it's free education to buy uniforms and all that. Because I could remember when I was working at the abattoir, a very handsome boy, small boy, will come there and then do these booking services at the slaughterhouse. Week number 1, he should even be condemned. And then, but the father was old, the mother was paralyzed.
Yeah.
So I talked to him. They said he's intelligent, he wants to go back to school. I said, okay, if you want to go back to school, I'll take you to the school, because he lived around Lamendal. I took him to the school, bought uniform, books and everything for him to start, and I said that I'm going to be paying terminal fees. Only for 2 weeks, he even disappeared from the family, not even come to the abattoir. I went to the school, he's nowhere. So you see now, what do you do? And then I remember also when the police were going to the abattoir at Abuko there, all these kids, they would send them. The parents would even come and appeal to me. Like abattoir, if you go there, you see these small boys outside. Some of them started very young at Abuko there. And then what they will tell you, their parents will come and tell you, these are the people feeding me. And then sometimes when you visit the family, you can understand the poverty in the family. That they don't. Okay, government also would not want to see that. But they don't have the resources, they don't have the means. And then we know these aids, sometimes they go with strings. If you do this, this is what you're going to do for you to get this. And then sometimes this does not match with our culture. And now the problem is there. I don't know how you're going to, it's a big challenge for you.
No, but the issue around government not having the fund, for me, I think it's just making an excuse for the government.
Honestly.
You know, I frown at the fact that this specific ministry that's responsible for all this, the gender, children, social welfare, comfortably we are able to move from a government facility and went to rent a private property. How much are they paying for rent? We are talking about millions. And yet you have moved that office complex to an environment that is not even inclusive. You go to a story building and this is a person, this is an institution that has to do with what, looking at social issues, that has to have an inclusive access. So for me, this is, I think I one time raised this issue with the Senate committee, that what would stop the National Assembly Senate committee to discuss this matter with the ministry? The other time when we had this committee town hall meeting, you talk about having children having malnutrition at the facility that is government owned.
Yeah.
That on the basis that they don't have money.
Yeah.
But you are comfortable paying millions and millions to rent, and you've never fought short of paying rent. So I think that's something that we need to look at. For me, again, when you look at some of these commitments at the international level, and I always say, will tell these people, when you look at some of these issues, it's not within the context of the Gambia alone. You looked at what's happened at the regional level, you looked at what's happened at the international level. And Gambia has ratified the UNCRC, the Convention on the Right of the Child. You go to section 4 of the convention, it telling state parties that they must able to do, right, and use their minimum resources, mega resources, to the maximum extent possible within international agri framework. So government has resources, but how government is prioritizing these issues of having children being included in these resources is the issue. Even when we have the COVID-19 came, when there's an issue of disaster, you wouldn't see a clear cut on issues of children. And this is where this committee should be able to look at the fact that if we are concerned around the issues of children, you have a whole national framework around issues of children, around issues of national development, and yet you don't have a clear cut. And yet you don't have a clear cut involving children is something again. And I think sometimes too, we concentrate a lot on the central government. That we have local government authorities. What are they doing when it comes to issues of child protection? Right? I have engaged series of them, and we have looked at the composition of their budget. You only see one budget item for children, and they said children for needy students. What does that mean? Children need so many things within the locality, and government obviously cannot. And unless and until we start taxing the local government authorities to see what do we have for children. After the elections and everything, when they were having their councillors, what happened? There's no single child representative in the entire setup. So that tells you, both at the national level, both at the local level, there is no clear cut as to what do we allocate for children. And I think for me, I always said, do not say there is no resource. There are resources. But how do we prioritize the issue of children within those resources?
I think that's where the challenge is also coming.
Yeah. The question you have, is it related to labor?
No, it's related to it.
The question you have, is it related to labor? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Actually, good morning, and I appreciate you also for coming late. Well, we thank you very much for coming, and I'll have a few questions that I would like to have clarity on, and which is, you've talked about the child labor, and especially apprenticing. So there are types of apprenticing, or one type of apprenticing which I think people are not realizing much, that is apprenticing in mechanic garage. Like, for example, you being a man, and you happen to have a son, and then being a mechanic, and you want your son to go into that line. And then as early as at the age of 6, 7, or 8 years, less than 10, and then you ask the guy, the little boy, to be, at your mechanic garage. And some may not even be their own children. And then the manner they are treated in the garage definitely is bad, because sometimes all what they will do is some mechanic garage. In some mechanic garage, some people will be smoking this yamba, and this is what the child will also learn. And at the end of the day, he will be using this thing as well. So I think that is very, very bad. One, I would like to know if this has been to your attention, how so far, what action have you taken to remedy that situation? And the second question is UNICEF, SOS, CPA, UN, and of course the Gambian government. What is your relationship? Is there regular meetings or whatsoever you have in order to remedy the situation? Because since the Gambia has an act, we have a law already about the Children's Act. So, and I think in collaboration, these institutions that I've stated should be working hand in glove to make sure, because you're working towards one direction, and that is child protection. So what is your relationship? Do you have any cordial relationship? I know, of course, with CPA, with Gambia government, and other institutions that I've mentioned with Gambia government separately, but are you working together to make sure that this child protection that we are going in line with to be protected, and of course the financial status as well? And there was a time that I traveled to Senegal. So on my way back, I met two men, and a child was on a motorbike, and a child was sitting in between them. And then I had to stop because their attempt was to tie up that particular guy, because as that connects to her question, Honorable Amikoli's question, that the child was attending this dara or whatsoever as Almut, and the child had to run away back to his parents' house. He knows what he's encountering. And then they had to take the child from his own father's house, trying to tie the child, and then take him back to the dara. So I had to intervene as a woman, and of course as an MP. And then I had to call the military of Senegal, who was not even far away from me, and then the guy had to intervene, and they had to take the child back to the station, and then to see how they should. So what should, in case that, because I know these are similar things that happens in most of these African countries, especially the West. So with CPA, should in case that happen, what will you do to help that particular child for not encountering such bad attempt? And also, yes, so far this is what I have as my question. And thank you very much.
Thank you. So, for me, the way I always make this discussion, very simplify this discussion, I don't discuss these issues out of the context of the legal framework. And when you look at the issue of apprenticeship, it's very clear in the Act. And it has put procedures in which this child must be able to be in which condition. Remember, you have 41 talks about night labor, 41 are exploitative labor, night labor 42, 43 talks about light hazardous labor, right? So when you look at the issue of hazardous, 44, has given qualification. In which circumstances would you look at an environment and think it is hazardous? For example, if a child is working at a mechanic garage, for example, what do we have? We have heavy equipment, machinery and everything.
Yeah.
The law is very clear that this child shouldn't be there in such an environment. It's hazardous environment. That should be Mark X. And also the law has provided as to where, if in, the child is supposed to go for an apprenticeship. There's a whole lot of conditions that's supposed to be put in. That the unit need to have a consent form signed by both parents. The terms and conditions in which this child is supposed to be working needs to be clarified, very clearly stipulated. Again, even the apprenticeship agreement as per the Act, that the moment this particular person graduates from being an apprentice should be given a certificate. Failure to do so, you are liable to conviction. And it could go for, I think, 12,000. Right. But now we looked at all these things. Who regulates where the student goes? No one. And the Department of Labor has been given the mandate to see both informal and formal setups, to see where to supervise, where children are and how they are, and keep a clear sheet to make sure that children are not being abused in such environment. Yes, I agree with you, Honorable, that the issue of these criminal activities that we just talked about before you came in relate to that. And unfortunately, I only hope we realize what is happening now. That because you have the influence of drugs on the street, easily accessible in any form, these children at tender age have started taking drugs. Before when you talk about drugs, we talk about marijuana. Now we talk about this gender bars and all these things now been happening, circulating. As tender age, they are very vulnerable. And the moment you start taking, now they are even used to break in. Right? They are used now to break in by adults. So basically they are either also to We had instances where they are now even used to serve as traffickers. They transport, they give them back, and they transport these drugs. So when you look at this entire, I think we have a lot of something that is so overwhelming. And to be quite honest, parents are not helping. Parents are not helping. The issue of parental responsibility in this country is something that we need to have a deeper reflection. But again, too, you talked about having to take that child and the child back on the street. So for me also too, I come from a very humble background. I don't know what is so humble about poverty. But also too, you need to reason out. You need to look at these issues objectively, not to be too subjective. That when you and I talked about the development, that ordinary person there is talking about survival. So, but how do we provide the needs to help them coming up? So yes, it's a whole cluster that we need to look at. What are parents too informed to know what is this apprenticeship about? Are those with running these facilities, do they even know what is the apprenticeship about? Do they even know these policies that we're talking about? Who regulates them? Right. So for me, I think in terms of regulation, in terms of supervision, that is also lacking. So that's one thing I want to talk about, the issue of child labor, child apprenticeship. Now the issue of collaboration, partnership, how do we work as partners? I think also too, when you look at this, we have what we call a politics among international donors. The bigger names, you call the UNICEF, the IOM, and all these agencies who have the funds. And I always raise this concern that we are not looking at how do we synergize resources, but sometimes they have what they call competing in terms of visibility. Right? And this would be, I remember I raised this issue with the American ambassador then, and this was in relation to having IOM to develop SOP on migrant children, UNICEF develop another SOP, another organization wants to do another SOP. So when you looked at that at that level, already confusion is set up by the donor partners who has the fund to ensure that how do we have a collective roadmap for the country, not for UNICEF, not for IOM, not for any other organization, but when we look at these issues, we see how best we collaborate and partner. So if partnership is not happening at that level, these bigger organizations, then that is trickled down to the other lower organizations that they work with. Sometimes I would always tell people, when you talk about issues of funding, it's either from the government side or from the civil society organization. We have a lot of funding. It's just that we are competing with those funding to create visibility rather than addressing the real issues. Yes. When you look at the coordination, again, Gambia should be celebrated. That I can walk to the minister's office without an appointment and discuss with him or her. I can call AIG, I said, AIG, I'm on my way to Banjul, I want to see you. And they will allow me. That tells you, in terms of our relationship, and I think this also happens to many civil society organizations in the country, that I am comfortable to even call a police station and said, there's this case in your station, I want you to brief me what is happening. And they will gladly do so. Different from when another particular party wants to get information, they tell you, go and talk to the police PRO. So for me, in terms of, we have the opportunity, in terms of strengthening our collaboration to address the issues. But unfortunately, this environment that we have, that's so cordial, we are not using it to impact the life and welfare of children who are the most concerned. We rather take our resources and put them into pieces, or we just put them anyhow, just because UNICEF is doing this, because CPA is a receipt from them. So unless and until we are able to have a clear roadmap at the level that, and government should be the one to champion that. That if UNICEF, if UNDPA, whatever organization in this country, they should be able to put their resources in government priority areas. And this should trickle down. And government should be able to explain that if your issue around child protection is about education, this other organization coming up cannot put in the same intervention, in the same region. You might encourage this other particular person to expand. So you have a wider coverage in what we do. But sometimes when you look at this, the amount of money we just spend, for example, International Day celebration, we spend a lot of money. CPA can spend 200,000, another organization 400,000, another 300,000. And this is the same international event. What is stopping us to come back and say, you know what, before we do all this, we do one national one organized by CSO. If we have enough funding, we can expand to other issues. But I think, to be quite honest, these are some of the issues that we are facing with. And I think, yes, as part of the committee should be able to look at that and see how best we are able to encourage the issue of further collaboration and partnerships, not only meeting and all this, but in terms of putting our resources together. I think this will definitely help us move further. And to a larger extent, you have talked about government not having the funding. And we have obviously we are aware of the real situation of this country. You have a government that is expanding on its deficit every annual year. And I'm glad, I don't know how far that's also going. The other time we met at the Carton, you know, the issue of you now encouraging to have program-driven budget allocation. And I think this also will help complementing with CSOs. But I think in a nutshell, this is what we want to talk about. The cordial relationship is there. But how cordial are we in working together to put the resources at maximum possible to address issues of children? Again, you talked about a child who has been bundled between two men. Sometimes these are simply issues of trafficking. Right, and I also, when we talk about some of these children selling and begging on the street, unfortunately, we don't also perceive the element of trafficking. Most of these children begging or selling, not even those begging, but those selling on the street, you engage them, they will tell you they are living with their aunties or their uncles who are not their biological parents. And most of the time when you engage with them, they will tell you the promises been made before bringing them to the rural Gambia. So when you look at this and you study that, you realize actually there should be so many people that should have been prosecuted for trafficking children in this country. Go to the rural Gambia because you have a child, you bring the child here with hope, with education, you put the child into exploitative environment. That is a classical definition of trafficking. But also when we discuss these issues, we don't discuss these issues to say, can we also go further down and look at how do we look at this issue of trafficking? Because you cannot also have the law and you think that parents cannot also be prosecuted. If you have a situation and you feel that you cannot prosecute parents, then nothing will change. And we know the attitude of this country. Sometimes for me it's not about we don't know. Sometimes it's about how can I easily have the extra.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, doctor, you.
Sorry. Because like he mentioned trafficking, you mentioned trafficking, and then one of the causes or reasons of trafficking are related to unemployment or poverty. And then fighting poverty is not an easy thing because you must have the resources, and then in managing those resources, you must have the right people occupying the right positions, which is another challenge that we are facing. Like what we are saying, put me in that position, I'm thinking about myself and my children. And then the rest we forget about them. So this is one challenge. I don't know what advice, like even the one you are talking about, government spending a lot in renting while you have other things to do. In fact, you sell land, at the same time you go and rent. These are things that we are even looking at our budget, PEG and FPAC, and then the whole parliament is now almost going against that, because we cannot continue like renting, paying millions, while we have other activities to run. Then we run into a budget deficit of like 4 billion like for this thing. Like I told you last time when I went around to the institutions to find out how much so far they said was like the 100% that we have approved. None is even able to tell me beyond 20%. And the year has almost ended. We mean there are a lot of things. So on poverty, when you start fighting, immediately you stop, you look back. This is where you see the soldier that you see, everyone is coming again in millions, in the increase. So I don't know how would it just...
That's an input. And
All right, thank you so much. My apologies for coming late. I would like to welcome the gentleman, Mr. Fatih. The children of this country is a cause of concern to any parent. as we all started, the poverty can trigger so many things. But being a parent also, you have a responsibility to be taken care of. Being in a poverty doesn't mean that you have to sell out your children. I am totally against this Almudo business because at my school age, I one time adopted Almudo, which end up with a police case, with a very terrible experience. That little child theft from somebody, based on the fact that the guardian was giving him a multi-tax a day. Early morning they will be doing the recitation of Quran, but after 10 o'clock they have to dispatch. Everybody should come home. In those days, this is the 90s.
Still
yeah, you have to come home with a substantial amount which you are taxed on. If you don't, you either go home, you'll be flogged seriously for not making the day for that particular amount. So this little boy happened to do such. I found a couple of women started beating him. Then I intervened. I said, what is going on here? They said the little boy took some money from a groundnut seller, which is about like $13 in those days. They were flogging him seriously. Then, at that time, the school bus is just only 25 bucks. Yeah, I carry him to Bagao. So I have that child for 3 days while they started to look for it. Then I was hiding it because I don't want my father also to know that. That child was with me. So, at the end of the case, they have to report the missing child. So when I had that, then I have to report it to my dad. I said, you know what, I did something which I don't want you to know, but I feel sorry for this little boy. And I keep it in my room. That's my younger brother's, how to call it, sister, for her to take care of the little boy. 3 days, but my mom knows it. But we all have fear of my dad, how terrible he is. Sometimes he is very tense. So when I understand that the matter is been the case, they reported me to the school. When the master called me, that was the late father of Isafar. Then I explained myself. I said, I found that this little boy has been abused, and that abuse I cannot take it. I take it home, and I just tried to find my way how to explain it to my dad. If I can take it to Bagao school, we will take care of him. But at the end of the day, he said that's not the right way to do it. If you want that, you need a counseling. We would like to find out where the parents of the children are. And eventually, the little boy was in Bagao, but he will travel all the way to BANJUL with any available vehicle just to find a day to meet. So by that stigma of seeing that little child being abused, and the parents, when they give that child to the marabout, wasn't for him to go for begging. And according to the father, when they arrested the father, when he came, do you know what he said? He said he provided the mattress. He provided every month, he will send a bag of rice for the child, and he will attach $500. In those days, he will attach $500 for his child's feeding. But with all that, the child have only one lesson a day, which is only early morning after Fajr prayers. There will be recitation for up to 10 o'clock. Then they dispatch. The whole day, what they eat, wherever they go through, it doesn't work. So by doing such, I think the government intervenes. That child end up in social welfare. I did everything. My family supported me. At the end of the day, social welfare take the responsibility of the child and they send him to school. You know. So I think still now the government, as you said, the government have so many tasks to be doing this. And some of these marabouts threatening people that when you give your child to them, they're threatening you. Even they are abusing them, nobody will do it. I think those marabouts also need to be on the table for a sensitization. They need to protect the rights of those children because they are very vulnerable. When somebody attacks the children to you, they just want you to acquire them a knowledge. If you cannot give out that, you don't have to take that responsibility or to continue abusing the children. I think there should no marabout in this country who should be subjecting such a kind to the children, which that was not the interest of the parents. The vulnerability of those children or the poverty of the family is putting those children's lives in jeopardy. And I think the government should come with a kind of a policy whereby there should be a foster parent, I don't know whether you have that one, whether you have a foster parent where such a scenario happens, if the government happen to know it, after exhausting the investigation, those children can be forfeit from those marabouts or from even their parents if they are not taking the responsibility of those children. the foster parents can take care of that, but that foster parents also need to be monitored, and they need to be on contract basis to make sure that those children responsibilities and their right be foreseen for everything. When those happens, the agent there should be a kind of agency. Those agencies need to be responsible, should in case they default on the social contract they have with the agency, the child protection, or with the government. I think some of these things should be put in the modalities to at least to still not to compile the interest of those vulnerable children. These are my little experience.
Very good experience. Yes, Honorable, you have your question.
Yeah, I think we already discussed
about that.
What would the child, what is the CPA doing about child rape, for example, or early marriage? What are your engagements on that?
Teenage pregnancy.
Yes.
Teenage pregnancy.
Yeah.
So again, as I always say, we always work within the context of the legal framework.
Yeah.
And when issues where rape is involved, it becomes an issue of a state matter. It's a criminal issue. And what we do most of the time, we either have to support the victim and the family through the process of having the legal process.
Yeah.
Also by holding those authorities that are responsible to ensure that the law is being enforced. I just had a morning discussion with AIG this morning, having been informed that the case that we've worked on and we've been monitoring in Sibano, the case was compromised, and this has involved a child of 9 years of age who has been multiply raped by an individual who is a neighbor to the family. So when I learned the case has been compromised, I have to call the AIG to say, this is the issue and this is the situation. I want you to make sure that you are able to work on this. So this morning I was there for him to give me feedback as to how far they've gone. So when it comes to issue, whether it's rape or whether it's any criminal-related issue against children in this country, we always ensure that the state must be able to take, especially within the issues of law enforcement. But unfortunately, the greatest challenge we have in this country is at the level of enforcement of the law, not at the judicial part, but at the level of the police where we have the first contact. And it's disheartening sometimes, and I think the child raised the issue, that a minister is proud to say Gambia is able to have a database that captures 115 or 17 rape cases.
Rape cases, yeah.
Why would anybody glamorize that you are able to have rape cases of 117 within the scope of months? This is about 4 months. A real country that is working toward addressing issues of rape or sexual abuse of children, you cannot even brag about having 5 reports because you should zeroize it. But unfortunately, when you look at the statistics, as what has been reported, and this is only what has been reported, but we have thousands that have not been able to find their ways.
Yeah. So
Right. Again, also to this, some would not report because they don't have trust in the police. Because you have, most of the time when we talk around some of these issues within how do we involve the police or the law enforcement agencies, we hardly talk about the issue of corruption. And I think this is actually hampering the smooth enforcement, arrest and prosecution of perpetrators. Right. So for me, I think when this incident happened, we encourage people to reach out to CPA. I think one thing we are also fortunate is the fact that we have a very good cordial relationship with the top ranks within the police. It's a matter of calling and said, okay, we want to get this. But at the level of the police, the level of the station, we equally also try, but sometimes too you realize no matter how much you try, when they want to monetize the cases, they would. Right? So when rape happens, we ensure that we report. And with CPA, when it happens, obviously, most of the time when it reaches out to CPA, most of those cases have been taken care of. But we know that there are many cases that have not reached out to us, that have not reached to our desk, and as a result of that, they've been compromised. So I think yes, then we need to do a lot more in terms of how do we make sure that at the level of the police, we are able to engage the authorities to ensure that cases are not monetized. We have just seen a recent publication of Mulligan that involves a white person that has molested and raped children as young as 13, 12, 14 years of age. And nothing came out of it. And I can be a testimony to one of the fact that, well, there has been an extortion from the perpetrator and allowing the victim to suffer. So these are some of the issues that we think that is a bottleneck in having the effective enforcement of laws when it comes to issues of rape or any enforcement bit.
So do you have a call number, for example, that people can alert you when they discover something? Sometimes it's, some women may feel that it is trying to stigmatize. If I raise my voice and say this happened to me, you know, I'll be stigmatized within the society, so let me just keep quiet. But if you have a call number, maybe that will help. It happens, somebody just call you and say this is what is happening. Maybe you know professionally how to take care of that.
Yes.
Wouldn't that not help?
Yes, so there's a helpline.
Yeah.
But I think what needs to happen with the helpline is who monitor, and outside of who monitor the effective enforcement. Because the call line could be the same. You receive the complaint, but are you actually prosecuting? Are you definitely implementing, enforcing the law when it comes to the enforcement? Yeah. Yes, we have the 1313 that talks about the issue of gender-based violence. 1313. Yeah, we have the 199 that also talks about the issue of child abuse in this country. Yeah. So yes, those are mechanisms. When you look at the entire national child protection mechanism in this country, we have very good structures. But how do we have them robust? That's where the problem is. And you talked about the issue of capacity again. Even sometimes the people that are supposed to deal with issues, especially the issue of the technicality around the issue of rape, most of the cases are thrown from the police outside the police station simply because a medical report did not indicate that there's a penetration, which is contradicting to what actually is in the Sexual Offence Act. Because the Sexual Offence Act about it is very simple. There's no ambiguity in it. Yeah. It says the slightest degree, whether it's the mouth, whether it's any opening of the body. Yeah. So if somebody actually has used his finger or tongue and placed it within the private part of it, the law has classified that as rape. Yes. So you cannot just draw that out of the case. And also we have instances where we know rape in cases that involve capital punishment, which does not give the police the authority to grant bail, but the police at their level will grant bail. And the moment those issues are being handled at the level of the police station in terms of granting bail, greater part of the most of those cases become compromised.
Yes, it was a police.
Yes.
But then there's a contradiction, because the law says no person should be detained more than 72 hours and not to explain to the person the language that you understand why he's arrested. Yes. And should be subjected to bail. Yes. So and you are saying that the act is saying that the person should not be bail.
Honorable, when you look at the capital offences, right? When you look at rape is being classified into three aspects in this act. That also depending on the circumstances. You can be reprimanded or conviction about 20 years, depending on the circumstances.
By a competent court. Not that the person is an accused.
No. And that is not even at the level of the court. Yes. That is at the level of the investigation. If the investigation is able to establish facts and its findings and able to say, okay, this particular rape, looking at the circumstances, could serve, you could go for 20 years, or you could go for 11 years, or you could go for life imprisonment. Again, one of the ambiguities we have within the Sexual Offence Act is the fact that it does not give a clear, explicit definition of what would warrant somebody to go to 20 years imprisonment, or what would warrant someone to go for 11 or 12 years imprisonment. But the one with the life imprisonment is clearly explicit, and it's put conditions that if anybody sleeps with a child who is below the age of 13 years below, it's a capital offense, it's life imprisonment upon conviction. If you as a parent, right, you have a kind of knowledge of a person regardless of the age, as far as the person is below the age of 18, is a capital offense. It's not imprisonment. Typical one example would be the popular Bob Keita case, that the child was 15 years of age, but the state take it as was capital offense, so therefore the person cannot be granted bail. And the third one also too would be where the rape has actually caused health implication to that individual. And sometimes we even have seen where rape will turn about to death. So in those conditions,
Or HIV.
right, exactly. So in those conditions here, that particular person is, the offense committed is capital offense. And even as where we read out rape, the police don't have the jurisdiction to grant bail. Because the issue of 72 hours is not saying to release, it's saying to charge, to inform. So that's different from releasing the person. So you're saying you don't keep him without telling him what he has committed.
Yes.
But you can inform him and detain him, depending on the circumstances.
Okay.
Yes.
The 72 hours is about charging the person and taking the person before court, before 72 hours. And if you know that it's going to be beyond 72 hours, you take the person to court and the court decides
Yes, exactly.
whether to still keep him in remand or release him or her.
And the law is coined in a way where it always creates a loop.
But it is clear that
Yeah.
if it is capital offenses,
Yeah.
the discretion is with the court. They know the gravity of the case.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. That's why the police also. Sometimes you said that sometimes the police will release the accused person. Now the police also in real law they have their limitation.
Yes.
Until the courts act. Do you understand? So, but if not, because the person is an accused, he's not found
You
guilty.
should take the person to court.
Yeah.
So
So I think we need to
So-
expedite the judicial process, and this syndrome of master, like if there is a case to be reported.
SMS?
Yes.
I thought you said SMS.
Yes, I just.
Well, your question has been raised.
The law, the right to. It's here, right?
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes. So well, before you raise that question, the question is the teenage pregnancy. An issue of teenage pregnancy has been raised.
Yes.
I don't know if you have any response to that.
So the issue of teenage pregnancy should be looked at within the context of having a law that bans child marriage.
Yeah.
As you have the law that bans child marriage, the same law that bans the issue of having children to engage into sexual relation.
Yeah.
So any person who engage a child into any sexual relation resulted to pregnancy, that person should be prosecuted. So again, this is just telling you what are we doing in terms of enforcement. And that's why when you looked at the sexual offense that it has rape and it has what we call the defilement.
Yeah.
Defilement simply means, maybe that child is 16, 17 years, they think that this child reasonably could able to, know what is right or wrong.
Yeah.
So, but also to the law would not tell you, the law has clarified this child cannot give consent.
Yeah.
So any person who has a sexual relationship with a child, you have committed an offense and should be reported and arrested and prosecuted. But again, most of these things, so I think somebody talks about the issue of the master or family prestige. You are not comfortable to talk about this because you want to see how society will perceive you.
Yeah.
And again, also too, the law does not have any loopholes when it comes to reporting issues.
Okay.
You go to section 67 of the Act, it talks about, it places emphasis and obligation on every member of the public that you are obliged to report where you suspect or right? But again, also too, the law has factored in our context that sometimes because we live in a very close society, when I report matter, how would the society look at me? If I live with Honorable Saho and I reported him, how would that be within the perception of the committee? The law says 70, I think this is 73. You could report your case, right, to the police, and you can tell the police, my identity shall not be known. And during the entire proceeding of the court, your statement would be classified as confidential. So that there would be any loophole to say, because someone reported somebody will know. No, the law has provided that. So I think people are not reporting the case. And again, also to somebody say, "What's what about the police be?" They will only know about it, but what will come out of it.
Yeah.
So these are some of the issues that we have. But also, too, the law does not encourage anything around teenage pregnancy.
But you have parents also who would say, they would say, well, my child is already pregnant by this month, so let me just arrange the marriage after the pregnancy. You've come across that.
Yeah, and this is where there's no peace.
That's unlawful.
You know, the law does not give a waiver. The law does not give a waiver when crime is committed.
Yes.
And parents, because they think they have no other choice than to accept, that should not be a waiver for the law not to take its course. Because when crimes are committed, it's beyond that person. That's why when you are charged for rape, when you are charged for defilement, you are in court. Who is taking you to court is the state. It's you versus the state.
Exactly.
I remember, I think somebody called me to say, this particular Sibarot case, the entire committee went to talk to this woman.
Yes,
Yes, and when I talked to the police prosecutor, I said, let me tell you one thing, that to the extent that the police went to have an affidavit signed by the woman, I said, you have failed in your responsibility. That as much as the committee pressurized this woman, the woman, yes, I forgive, stop at her level. But that does not interfere with the issue of the law.
The law,
And sometimes they would say, but what about if we take the matter to court, they will not appear as witness.
Yes.
No, the law is very clear. You go to section 100 of the Act, says what? Where they know that you have ample evidence. In this particular case, you shall be summoned to appear before the court. And you shall be, and you shall give a statement. So I think there's a whole lot of things that we need to do.
I think I will agree with you there, because what my problem is to implement those laws to be effective. I think that's where our problem is.
Thank you.
Because when the case been reported, the investigation mounted, and it's almost exhausted. When the pressure came to the family for them to withdraw the case, by withdrawing the case, that's another thing. But the state should be defiant to make sure that this case has been continued and prosecuted the perpetrators.
Exactly.
But they don't do that.
They don't.
Because I think about less than a year, even involved the Minister of Gender, who he himself, at the time he was not even in the country, but he also called the IG, because I send all the necessary documentation to the police. I went to the police by myself. Somebody was seriously abusing the wife to a point to slam the vehicle door towards a woman's leg. You cannot even watch it. So such a brutality on a woman, the mother has been reported to the police, and they went to arrest the guy. You have so many bureaucracy in this country. 2 to 3 days, they release the guy on bail. After releasing him, now they have to put the pressure on the woman to withdraw the case. But for me, still, I don't even talk. We are not even talking that, because you cannot make me to exhaust my energy involving every authority for them to protect you. At the end of the day, you fear of the family. The husband is threatening him. I will take you to Marabo. You will never marry again. All kind of such a stigma in the hair. The woman just deliberately called me. For me, definitely I know what you've been trying for me. But if I don't withdraw this case, probably this is going to be the end of me, because he's even threatening me that I'm not going to be married. And my mom is saying that I will be the first daughter who will be subjected his husband to the law. And if this man has to be in jail, then therefore my life is already messed up. So such a thing, I went to the police again. I said I'm not agreeing to the withdrawal of the case. Right now we are not even setting the sample for the woman anymore. But we want to make sure that the law protect the woman. So in case this case has been pursued to the ladder, probably men might be protective, or even they have an anger management, they will know how to abuse and how to deal with it. But instead of abusing them to such a manner, I don't agree to that. But guess what? You told me, we can't do anything. We have a call from up. But who is up? Nobody is there to tell me. God. I say, tell me who is responsible for that directive from you. They cannot give me.
Maybe also to what
So I think the law should be strengthened, and you people who are responsible for such a portfolios, you need to make sure that the state is not withdrawing. If the person withdraws, that's number one. That's his or her right. But the state need to make sure that the prosecution happens.
But what is interesting sometimes, if you know the gravity of the punishment you're going to receive, the police will encourage you to have a negotiation. For you
In
to-
terms of child pregnancy.
Those police are
Yes,
Or in terms of
with all
pregnancy.
these issues that we're talking
Yes.
about.
It do happen.
they are.
They'll tell you, it's better you go and talk it as a family.
Yes.
So if the issue
Yes.
is, if the family accept to withdraw the case,
Yeah.
they will come back to the puppet accused and say, you should have gone for life imprisonment. So therefore you need to give something.
Yeah.
So this is where extortion comes from. So sometimes when they encourage to say negotiate, it's not about peacemaking.
Yes.
No, it's about when they go back to this person and said, hadn't been our intervention, you would go. So they take money for those cases.
Yeah.
So, and
Yes.
again to
No, they even tell you have withdrawn, but we have not withdrawn.
thank you, I think they have their fish money. And again, we don't have provisions in the law that to give, witness protection.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes even children will be forced they will tend to put them into early marriage or child marriage, but they are scared to come out and talk, because when they talk, the authorities are already concerned. Oh, this is done, we intervene, we stop. But what happens to this guy's child? So unless and until we create a protection, witness protection mechanism, and it's not only about, when the person report this, don't do this, no.
Yeah.
The government must be able to provide a package to make sure that this particular person go through the process.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry.
Okay. You have a supplementary.
Yeah, I have something.
These are experience.
And
So
these
that-
are,
But
these
they
are-
always do this. They
these are
always
good to
negotiate
many
cases.
who don't
Yes.
share their story.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
He's
you.
so bold enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
And this is
you.
what we need.
But we also have the issue of tourism,
Child sex, tourism.
child sex tourism. Many issues emerge from that. We want to share that. If you have any experience on that also, you can share with us.
I think with that one, I had a bitter experience. I was one time arrested for granting an interview to an online medium. They called the Sun newspaper in the UK, even though at one point I was misquoted. But I think the issue of child sex tourism, this really is happening, and unfortunately, we only try to put politics in it. That we make pronouncements that we think that we are addressing the issue, but nothing is really happening, because we have reports that have indicated the prevalence of child sex tourism in the Gambia, and then we have seen media outlets, both internationally, that has highlighted that the issues is happening. And again, because it's not that we don't have the laws, we have the Sex Tourism Offence Act, Sexual Tourism Offence Act, which is in place. But when it comes to the enforcement and looking at the mechanisms, we don't actually do a proper monitoring to ensure that these laws are enforced. And again, within the tourism sector now, what is really happening is that you have these bouncers or middlemen that befriend these tourists before coming to the Gambia. That to the extent now tourists are not even keen to be in the hotels. They live in communities where they have easy access to these children.
Yeah.
A typical case of a white person, a British person, British national, who has lived within a community, I think it's a Tangier, has a place, resident in the Gambia, live alone, no maid, no nothing. What all he does is to go after young girls, and he has been raping them. So for me, as much as in 2019, 2020, that was when we even have a bitter national debate, and this was the period I was arrested, and this was the time that we have a publication that says Gambia is a paradise for sex tourism in this country. And it's unfortunate that Gambia as a country, we are only reactive. We only react to issues.
When it's fresh.
Right, when it's fresh. And we talk about it 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, we let it go.
Few days.
And I remember I had an issue with Ahmad Ba, the tourism minister, when he alluded that, yes, because sometimes civil society organizations or people who talk about the issue of sex tourism to the media are being paid $400 or so. And I remember telling him, I think Gambia, we need to be very honest and sincere to ourselves. that being a member of parliamentary, parliamentarian, you are a director, you are whatever, you think that you are in a so-called certain class in the society. When you close from work, you get to your house, your kids are not there, you get frowned at them. And you will always tell them, one hand, I will make us in better, good. Because the street is not, it's so intoxicated, right? But the issue of sex tourism is, right, we have stories, we have images that portray it, and quite often also too, when we talk about sex tourism, we tend to concentrate more on the girl child.
Yes.
That are not capturing that of the boy child.
Yeah.
Right, and families celebrate. I mean, Fadi at 15 years can date an old man of 60. My family will celebrate that.
Yeah.
I moved to Abu also. Right, but in the context of the law, in the context of child protection, that particular person coming to this country, luring young boys below the age of 18, is classified as what? Sex tourism.
Yeah.
Even the government would protest, and they've been saying, they will protest to say, no, what we have, we don't have sex tourism in the Gambia. What we have is child sex tourism. Child sexual exploitation in tourism.
Child?
Sexual exploitation in tourism. Because for them, their definition is sex tourism means you can come and go anywhere and have the clientele and do it. And the position is always, if government fail to enforce the laws, government gives a blind eye to all these things happening to children because you are trying to protect your tourism interests. And this is what is happening. That sometimes some of the publications we talk about tourists coming to the Gambia, exploiting, abusing our children. It is discouraging tourists from coming to the Gambia. Right, but unfortunately, this is a country, we don't have children that we sell. When Gambia promotes tourism, it doesn't say we have young beautiful Gambian girls. It talks about the sandy beach, the sunshine, and all this, but not about girls. So if tourists come to the Gambia and they have their leverage to do whatever they want to do, and we don't put the mechanism to address it, it continues. And to be quite honest, you go to Senegambia Inn for now, for example. These children selling, you see them there, right? You even look at the access to the tourism development area by children, even the act discourages that. But you see them there. And sometimes you can see them, an individual with group, a white person with group of children going again. Who is actually regulating that? Families also are too comfortable having to say, because it's a tubab, your children can go to that particular tubab any odd hour, any time. That particular person coming here as a tourist and engaging those children into issues of sexual relation. When we looked at that, we call it as sex tourism. It's a sexual exploitation by our tourists that comes to this country. But having discussed about all those things, again, I know this COVID-19 has helped to reduce the fact because you don't have tourists coming because of the COVID restriction. Yeah. But I know also too, when the tourist season is booming, it's something that we need to talk about, it's something that we need to as well address. And I obviously would recognize government effort. I know after such engagements, we have the national tourism policy and strategy being developed. And then they have a whole project within the World Bank to see how best they are also able to capture the issue of human rights, including child sex tourism. But again, those are policies, those are plans. But are they actually being implemented to address the issues affecting children within the tourism development area?
Okay. So what you are trying to say is that, or would you say that because of that pronouncement, the implementation of that particular issue has been tailored down?
No.
The implementation of?
Well, you know, is government trying to save the tourism industry by coming up with that pronouncement?
No, it's not really a pronouncement. It's a policy document. Now they have a national strategy for tourism, for sustainable tourism, whatever they call it. But they also have the national plan of action. Yeah. And when you look at within that, you have a whole element looking at the issue of child protection, or no, human rights protection, including child protection.
Yeah.
I know we did I was part of the committee that they engaged to see how best we are able to get up some of those things. But again, for me, it's two things again. You can have a well comprehensive strategy, you can have a well comprehensive policy, but at the end of the day, it does not translate to addressing these issues.
Yeah.
Because normally, when you go to the beach, Senegambia area should definitely be clean of children on the street. But when you go there, what do you see? You see them moving in and out.
Yeah.
And then because also too, I think they need to do redouble up. Because we only have about 2 checkpoints or 3 checkpoints to the beach. It's one in Senegambia, Palma, and the other side of the OIC. After that, what happens? You have the whole stretch of the beach, all the way to Tanye. What checkpoint do you have? But then these places are classified as what? Industrial area. Right? Development whatsoever area. And the law is saying children cannot be wandering in those areas. Children cannot equally be in those areas unaccompanied. Right? But and I must also recognize that yes, we developed the code of conduct for hoteliers. This has been helping because in the hotel it's a bit regulated. But also too, you have other hotels that also put restriction, and I cannot imagine why would that even happen in a country. That a hotel can sit down and say, these are areas that are restricted for security personnel. Yeah. That the police cannot walk in there and go and see what is happening there. You restrict them. So what is happening? Yes. So for me, this is something that we think that this should not be done because when you want to have a comprehensive child protection mechanism, you don't create a room for businesses or private sector to decide what you want to do. Right, and the law again is very clear that if your facility is being used to rape or abuse children, it should be confiscated to the state.
Yeah. Yeah.
But mind me, the issue of sex tourism is the only.
But what you are saying now, that's not the law. That's just these people creating their own
businesses creating a
pseudo legislation for themselves.
That's the business is telling you, this is my premises.
Yeah, but I'm saying, the law is not saying that.
No, the law is not saying that.
Yeah,
yes. So that's what I say. It cannot be.
The law comes first.
Yes, yes. But sometimes they would adhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes child welfare officer will talk to us and say, but they say that we cannot. I say, but who are they?
No.
Right.
Yes.
You have a question. Okay.
Mr. Fati, right?
Yes.
When we do talk about child rape, normally we tend to consider girls' child rape, isn't it? Which is very common in the Gambia, of course. And I know in some instances that we'll have male child rape.
Oh yes.
How common is that one? And what do you normally do as CPA or in collaboration with the Gambia government to protect that particular child equally as the girl child?
Yeah, because rape is rape. Both men and women could be raped. A boy can be raped and a girl can be raped. But unfortunately, I think for so long, we only tend to discuss about, anytime we talk about sex and sexuality, we only think about the issue of girls. But in the Gambia, we have seen boys being raped. Yeah. And I think what is now pumping up in this country is the issue that we're having boys now forming themselves into gay group association. Right, as young as 17, 18 coming down. Right, and then we have seen pedophilia also to have kind of like selective whatever they want. Some don't want girls, they want to just have small boys. Right, the Norwegian that was sentenced in 2010 in this country, he was actually dealing with boys alone. And his youngest victim was about 6 years of age.
6?
Yes.
So homosexual.
Yes. So it's happening, and I maybe one thing as a select committee, especially on the issue of children, I think you need to encourage the issue of national database, right? Because all this thing that is happening, I know from 2010 we have this special tribunal case for rape cases to expedite the rape cases. But since the establishment of that court, up to date, there has never been any prosecution. Even though we talked about sex tourism is happening, sexual tourism, children being exploited within sex tourism in this country is happening. So I think there's a whole lot of things that we think we need to do to put in place. Yeah, but boys are equally rare, and it's getting on the increase.
Thank you. Yes, Doctor.
Thank you, Vladimir. I just want an update on what CPA is doing, which is a consortium of different organizations about online child sexual abuse. You know, the point is now they have moved from offline, now they are online. And I was doing a research on that. I interviewed you. The findings are, it is happening in the Gambia. And that is very difficult to fight, especially when it comes to online.
Yes.
What is CPA and partners doing about that? Because it is as dangerous as offline.
Yes. Right.
And I think as a nation, we should start fighting it because other nations are fighting it.
Yeah.
And the doers, if you want, or the perpetrators now are moving to less developed countries where they can easily detect, because it is very technical, it involves a lot of expertise, and it calls for a lot of resources. Secondly is, all the time when you talk about child protection in the Gambia, you talk about the Children's Act. And it has been proven that the Children's Act needs to be revised to catch up with the current situation. What is CPA and partners doing about this act?
Thank you. Okay, so the issue of the online, these are emerging issues globally. But I remember having even engaged the British partners that came to do some fact finding. Even in UK, they don't have a regulation that regulate the online, and this kind of like put it more of a difficulty to regulate. But what we are able to do, Gambia has gone forward, because when you look at these two issues, you always want to look at them at two perspectives. One is the issue of trying to ensure that the users of this particular product or service get to know the negative consequences. And this is where we work with children to ensure that we develop their capacity to ensure that they have what we call responsible use of the social media platform. And it's so critical again, as you said, because you cannot have law that will restrict them using the social media, because it's a fundamental right for the child to have access to information and to impact information. So what you could do is it's not about, oh, let's put the laws to make sure that they don't use it. No. Let's put the emphasis to strengthen their understanding. When they are using this and they are able to see X, Y, and Z, they should be mindful. But again, and I would sum this with the last one you asked, when you look at the issue of regulation, because the law, the Children Act has never captured the issue of cyber sexual exploitation of children online, and equally also to the Constitution. But because when we look at the realities, we thought it necessary to have the Children Act being reviewed. And the Children Act has been extensively looked at and been reviewed. I think it's at the level of the ministry to do their drafting and Senate. I'm glad I would say I was the second lead consultant to look at the Children Act. And that we have a clear provision in the Children Act, the reviewed version, that looks at the issue of online exploitation, sexual exploitation of children. Even when you looked at the Children Act as it is, Section 61 have what we call harmful publication, punishment for harmful publication, and it puts something like 50,000 or so. But I think what we also suffer with our laws, sometimes they are too ambiguous. Because if you tell me harmful publication, give a clear definition of what do we term by harmful publication, right? Again, also too, when you talk about sexual exploitation of children, is not only between the child and the person engaging the child, but if I take the child picture and upload it on the social media platform, what am I doing? I'm compromising the integrity, the dignity of that particular person. I'm making the other party, this child, to become more prone to other elements. So this is what the law is looking at all. Yes, it was not there, but thank God now we have put the law to actually see how best we are able to work around the issue of child exploitation. And again, this is the most difficult one we will definitely work with, because every particular child that you see now almost is using this guy. And then we have seen from what we have noticed, there was a sex online platform, and this was young people in this country. Young people, they have their WhatsApp group, they do their thing. You go to that online, you see children acting porno. So there's a whole lot of issues that, again, you want to look at. If this child is enticed, that if you are able to do your naked body and upload it, you are given this amount of money, the fight becomes so difficult that children wouldn't want to even listen to when you talk about safe use of, because they are already in a platform that they are generating income. So again, I think this is not only specific to CPA, it's not specific to, this is a collective responsibility that no one needs to look at. The online platform is making child protection work very challenging and very difficult.
So what are you doing with the Ministry of Communication and Digital this thing? Have you ever engaged them with regards to sorry?
No, we never, because we feel most of the time we work with the line ministry, the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare. And I think we're also to, if only they are also aware of this incident, they should be able to get with their partner organization. Because I know sometimes when we do this course, we're thinking about, because it's a new trend coming in, you know, we only put it in the law, but it's not widely discussed, there is no widely consultation. But I know obviously it's important that you raise this issue. Maybe if you have our meeting, we could also raise that to say, how best we have a broader stakeholder engagement on the issue of online.
Yeah, I think it's important because even with this TikTok or whatsoever, there are a lot of things happening in TikTok now, and a lot of children are learning from that point. So which may not be good for them anyway.
Quite true. Quite true.
So I think it is high time we, the National Assembly, and of course you, as also to engage the ministry to see how this can stop.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Fati, before we wrap up, we are all members of the National Assembly, we all have our constituencies. What sort of collaboration are you thinking that we can have, this committee can have with the CPA, at least to impact on the issues?
On the issue. Yeah, well, looking at the mandate of the National Assembly, parliamentary for that matter, you have three functions that you think that when you use them, you should be able to at least to a certain degree influence and make a better change in the life and welfare of children in this country. You legislate, you look at the laws. You know, what are laws that you think that these are laws that are comprehensive? Are the laws adequate? And also for me, I think when you look at the issue of the laws, always we need to look at the three dimensions. What we have, what is our commitment at the regional, what is our commitment as per the standard, so that we align our laws, because this will always be forthcoming. And I think this is an area that we can all the time collaborate to discuss, to exchange ideas. And I must recommend the previous select committee, the National Assembly in general. I know there has been instances where we were asked to submit position papers in relation to certain issues, and I think this could be a continuity so that we discuss broadly, because this is a country that when you put everything together and you don't have a clear discussion on an issue of children, sometimes you tend to oversight the issues. Might not be deliberate, but because you're looking at the overall population, sometimes their issues are not being captured. So I think that's an area we can explore when we have a bill, when we have something that we think that is relevant, we could be able to have an input. But again, in terms of your oversight functioning, and I think this is where we come again with the National Assembly. The oversight functioning simply is about accountability. How do you ensure that those actors, those authorities that are in position to implement are actually doing their work? And this is where civil society also holds the same very people to account. But how do we work in that area again? For example, I might be frowning over the past years to say, if a ministry sit down and tell me we don't have budget, children are dying within the facility, government facility, but they are comfortable going to rent a private property. I think there should have been that easy access to the select committee to say, could you please call on the attention of the minister to give the reason why would they abandon government property to put this amount when they could have put the amount. Right, so I think this also this is very important. And so when we have issues, we can easily reach out to you. Whether it's the ministry, whether it's the police, whether it's the law enforcement, when we are not happy with certain things, we can alert you because you have the mandate to sanction somebody to say, can you appear before us, we discuss this issue. Again, the issue of budgetary allocation. I think I would implore on you on this. That when you look at the budget cycle of this country, civil society is not visible. Right? It's from the department, it's from the ministries to the parliament, whatever they discuss, they decide on. But how would you leverage on your partnership with civil society who has a keen interest as looking at what is the composition of the budget, what are the issues that you think when the budget comes you should be able to look at? Because you have the mandate to reduce and add on something, but this will also form. So I think when you look at your three main functions, for me there's always an area for collaboration, right? And again, maybe in our partnership, the National Assembly functions, especially this committee, might not be too well popularized, right? But we have a partner, we have an obligation that we could able to talk to the people, the public, that yes, there's a National Select Committee, National Assembly Select Committee on this. This is what they do when you have this. So at the end of the day, we are doing a complementary role. So for me, yes, we can have a partnership in our complementary role, but equally also we can have a accountability role where we discuss issues so that we don't have any issue of protocols. And I can easily call the chair and say, we have this issue, what do you think you can do about it? Right. Yeah. And I think I want to say your opportunity
before you go. And how extensive are your operations? How extensive? Are you in all regions or are you just in?
Well, the office is stationed in Bakode, but we have an intervention because that's my own thinking as a leader. That this is a CSO, it's an NGO, and what we do is strengthening government. So I am better off using government structures, government personnel within regions to implement together with them. So when project phase out, they continue doing the work. Yes. So we have intervention in LRR, CRR currently. So we have a 5-year project that we are doing with State Children.
Is the government giving you any subvention?
Not at all.
No subvention.
Not at all. Our rent alone is 200,000 every year.
Why don't we engage them? Because the issue with budgeting is that the committee or the National Assembly members cannot create a new budget line. But if you had engagement with the ministry, for example, and they create a budget line for subvention, then we can always come in and look at that. That will be easier than we cannot create.
No, the issue of the budgeting is not for subvention for the CSOs.
Yeah.
It's how do you prioritize the budgetary allocation. For example, if they, the other time I raised the issue.
Yeah.
You have a budget coming from the Ministry for Children Affairs.
Yes.
You have seen 5.something% all in the current expenditure.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be necessary to look at, okay, but this is a country where, for example, you cannot go to any region, you talk about public recreational facilities in this country.
Yeah.
sorry, you cannot go anywhere. You proudly talk about health-related issues in this country. So we want maybe when those two, you can look at and say, but why would you have 200 million for traveling alone? Why can't you have 1 million at least put it for issue of children? So that's what I'm talking about within government intervention. Because when you look at it in real terms, sometimes we have compromises. Because for me, CSOs don't have to compromise their accountability stance. Because that is what makes them CSOs. That's what makes them non-governmental. But the moment you have the element of them giving you money, they might control your narrative. I sometimes will talk to the National Human Rights Commission. I said, do you remember government is giving you money? So when you start giving them all this hard time, what they could do is to frustrate you. And how would they frustrate you? Is to reduce the amount of allocation. So we are okay without having government to give us subvention because they want to control the narrative. And when they control the narrative, we cannot hold them to account. Yes.
Great. Unless somebody has anything.
Yes.
I think we,
Yes, that's good. So, Mr. Fati, do you normally do sensitization with your communities?
Yes. We have established what we call the community child protection committees in almost greater committees in the Gambia, especially in the regions. We also have established voice clubs in schools. These are children that we engage. Equally, we do a lot of capacity building, and I think I will seize this opportunity. And I think I will have to write next week that we have already settled a 2 days engagement with the select committee on issues of children. So it will be a 2 days engagement. So this is one of the things we do. And again, I think there's another one also too. We are planning that you will have an engagement with children where you discuss. We have budget line for all those items. So we've been doing a lot in terms of the community sensitization, whether you go to the community or you have radio program or TV program.
Thank you.
thank you very much. Sorry. We can go the question now.
Yeah, I want to ask a question.
It's between the.
But basically, the question is related to what Parliament has already asked Mr. Fat.
Okay.
Yeah, and this will relate to the parents, their relationship with parents.
Yeah.
When they have any committee that relates to the parents directly, where they engage or involve, do you involve parents directly?
Yeah.
You have a committee?
Yes, we have the committee, which is in the committee. We call them the community child protection committees. But again, we have interventions where we identify parents. We have this project that we call the positive discipline in everyday parenting. So we tend to also develop the capacity of parents, to see how best they are able to administer discipline in a way that is not harmful to the well-being of their children. So basically, we work with how do I call it? Our approach is inclusivity. Yeah, maybe one thing I would acknowledge is the fact that we need to do more, especially when it comes to how do we have children with disability more visible in our programs. And this we are working now to see we get those institutions now involved as part of of our operation, so that we are able to also bring them on board.
Okay. Yes, then Mr. Fati, we thank you for this engagement. We are very grateful. And we've definitely learned quite a lot from this conversation. And we'll continue to use the helpline. We'll not forget that. The helpline. 1313 or 199. That is, anybody who sees, we can even give this to whoever is interested. They give this to as many people as possible, so that if they've seen anything relating to child abuse or whatever.
Yeah, it's also important that the party can also share your personal line.
That's useful. And the committee can take his number.
Yes.
Then we thank you for all your time.
All right, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Have a nice day.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah.